Hi guys, it's Chuck here again. As you can see, I've made a lot more progress with my arcade. The only thing left is I'm going to put some red trim around here and a piece of plexiglass up on top. Now the one issue that I've been fighting with that's been driving me insane is the issue where the IDs on your devices will change. So if you set the controls for all your games and then you come back just to reboot, it might cause the devices to lose their connection. This has been a long-standing issue with MAME. There was a utility that somebody had made that basically will rewrite your configuration files every time you launch a game, which means you have to make sure to load it before each game to reset those controls. However, if you have a bunch of different games that have different customized controls, you have to do that process for every single game. Now, in version 1.7.9, MAME did incorporate a fix where you can run a command called, or a function called map device. However, a lot of other people, including myself, had an issue where we would copy the config file straight off the website and it would give us an error saying that the configuration file could not be loaded. And again, copying and pasting of an example file straight from their site would not work on my system. So when you're getting ready to do this process, I figured out what the problem was and I want to share it with you. Again, my whole concept is if I had troubles getting it solved myself, then other people probably are, and I have seen other people complaining of the same issue. So the very first thing you want to do is we want to find out what our devices are. The easiest way to do that, and I'll show you a close-up of the screen when we get to that point. But what we're going to do is we're going to run a command and we're going to go to our location where we have MAME installed. CD emulator, oh, can't type when I'm not looking, emulator, and then we go to MAME, and what we're going to do here is almost everybody has Galaga. So what I'm typing in is the command is MAME 64 space Galaga space -v, and then I'm using the greater than symbol, which is the pipe command, and I'm sending all that data to Testtxt. So when you hit enter, the game comes up like normal, but then hit escape. And then when we look back at the command window, we'll just type in test.txt. And again, I will show a close-up of this file for your viewing. Grab my mouse. And basically, in here, this section here, which I will zoom in on, shows where the mouse is, where it's initializing all the devices. Now the benefit here is you get to see all the IDs, the vendor IDs and product IDs of all the devices. At the end of this video I will show you the product IDs that Ultimark uses because they happen to be my favorite, and that'll make it very easy for you to identify your devices. Now be aware, I have two of the Ultimark guns, one on each side, and I have two Logitech gamepad F310s. Now on the back of these F310s, you can select, there's an X or a D. D is for the direct input, X is for X input. If you have them selected on D, they will both show up with the exact same name in your operating system. MAME doesn't like that. The devices need to be individually named so that the system can find them easily. So if you switch them both to X, they will show up in the system as X input player 1 and X input player 2. Because they are named differently, we can map them separately and consistently. Now, once you've gotten this file, you see a bunch of mouse devices here that you're not necessarily sure what is what. So one thing you can do is go into your device manager And if you're not very comfortable with the tab commands, you might want to have a second mouse on standby, unless you have a trackball. If you have a trackball, you should be okay. But once you disable your mouse, you may have a problem getting mouse activity back on your PC. But we open up mouse and pointing devices, and we'll basically right click and disable the device, and then move all of our various mouse components and find out which one's not working. Once you've figured out which one's not working, you can re-enable it, and then go look at the properties, and under details, hit the drop down and select hardware IDs. Make a note of the VID and the PID. These are indicators that you will use in MAME to identify that device. Once you've identified all of your arcade controls, we'll move on to the next step. That next step is going to be making your control file. Now, the problem with the example given online is that they put very long product IDs in here. Now, my system is a Windows 7 machine with all the current updates. Maybe that's the reason why the older ones might work. Maybe the XML had an update somewhere that prevented some characters. I'm not sure. But the ones from the website did not work for me. This does, and it's actually more simple. So, on my screen you can see mouse code 1 is the trackball. All I had to do is put in PID underscore 15A1. That is the trackball. The spinner control that I have is mouse code 2, and that is 15A2 is the product ID. Now the guns get kind of funny, because on the gun you have the gun and you have the trigger, but then you have two buttons, one on either side. This creates two devices in your system. In my case, PID 1603 is because this gun is set as ID 3 in the Ultimark software. So you'll see 1603. I've given that gun code 1. That will control the aiming function, and the trigger function will be associated to gun code 1. However, this button and this button will be listed in my system as 8-track device number 3. So I've assigned 8-track device number 3 as joy code 1. So in the system what you'll see is joy code 1, button 2. Now the same thing for the other gun, except for on this gun, this has been given ID 4. So it will show up as 1604. The 8-track device shows up as 8-track device number 4. So again, you need to have both of them coded separately. This is gun code 2 in my system, and the buttons are joy code 2 in my system. The Ultra 360 controllers, they show up on my system as Ultimark Ultra Stick Player 3, because I set this as ID 3. And the next one is Ultimark Ultra Stick Player 4, which I've set up as joy code 4. Now again, we get into the game pads. My system happened to find them in the opposite positions, but that won't change between reboots, so I'm not really worried about it. This device is X Input Player 1. And again, that's now got joy code 5 on it. The other one is joy code 6, and it lists as Player 2. Again, if you happen to have these Logitech 350, F310 controllers, make sure they're in X mode. It'll make it a lot easier to track your inputs. Again, the key here to make those instructions that you see on the web for this problem function correctly is 1, you have to have MAME version 179 or higher, and 2, don't use the very long codes that they're showing in their examples. Make it as simple as possible. It makes it easier on you. It makes it easier for the system to find it. So once you've got this file in place, or you've created this file, you save it in your controller folder. Make sure to remember what you're naming this file, because afterwards what you'll do is you'll go into MAME, the main folder, and then you'll go to your MAME.ini file. When you scroll down to the section that says Core Input Options, there's an option for CTRLR. So in that, tab over to that section and type in the name of the file that you just created. Do not include the .cfg. Just put in the name itself, no extension. What will happen is anytime you launch MAME, as long as you haven't defined a controller file, it will use the one we just created and therefore map all the devices correctly. After this is set up, simply go back to DOS, launch MAME 64 with no ROM specified. You can then go down to Configure Options and configure all your options, and it will automatically have the correct joy codes and everything assigned to what you've specified in that configuration file. The benefit of doing it this way is, unlike the old way where you would have to make different configuration files for any game where you had different controls, this allows you to use MAME's core functionality the way it was intended. So you set up all your default controls, which will be your master global list. However, then when you go into a separate game, say hard driving, which has a lot of weird control requirements, you can feel free to reconfigure the controls for that game however you wish, and the mapping will stay correct when you come back because the mapping is occurring within MAME directly. Hey guys, so if you liked this video and found it helpful, please subscribe below and leave your comments. I'd be happy to help. And as promised, here are the codes that I'm aware of for the Ultimark products. Thank you.